What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Rantin Review Entertainment. It's been a minute, but Stranger Things Season 5 is out. So we're going to give her a little discussion here. Talk about what was going on in this episode and the final season of one of the last big tentpole shows that actually exist anymore. The kids are pretty old now. they are not the little kids they were so many years ago when this show first debuted on Netflix. But we're going to talk about it here. Of course, this being YouTube, you know what to do. Hit the like button, subscribe button, and the notification bell. And if you like this video, be sure to share it on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, wherever you talk about entertainment and Stranger Things. So let's see what's going on. So the boys are back. They're all a little bit older now. Dustin is kind of rocking that late 80s trench coat mafia kind of thing going on. He's got the long hair, and it will reflect this change in his character because Dustin's a little bit more on the edge in this season. Mike is still obviously pining away for 11, and they're still in love and all of that good stuff, but he's got some lingering issues around him with Will because, as we had suspected for a while, and it was confirmed last season, Will is gay and has a crush on Mike, and has had a crush on Mike probably for a very, very long time. And how is that going to manifest this season? And of course, there's Lucas, who's still sitting by the bedside of Max, hoping that she comes back to life. And yeah, that gets into a whole other that opens up a whole other can of worms in this show. We are also introduced to a new character, but not quite a new character, but a new actress playing Holly, who is the youngest sibling of the Wheelers. Of course, there's Nancy, the oldest daughter, Mike, the middle son, and Holly, who, you know, she looked at the lights and stuff in season 1, but she's a full-on character now, and the Duffer Brothers have said over the years that she would be. Mike does be a bit of a big brother to her, but she's seen an imaginary person based off of characters from A Wrinkle in Time, one of the many references in this season to Stranger Things and kind of the backbone of the storyline in this season. We have Holly, who's now the youngest daughter. She's played by a new actress who's playing the youngest daughter of the Wheelers, and she's got some pretty cool stuff going on. Holly is really our kind of in from Vecna, the villain of the series at this point. He's chosen her, and the Demogorgons are going to attack her. Now, Will, having now his new enhanced powers, he kind of feels this. He can kind of see, like Harry Potter could see what Voldemort did in the Harry Potter series, what the attacks are going to be, and he sees that Vecna is going to attack the Wheelers. This leads to an interesting scene at the Wheelers' home at the beginning of episode 2, which is something I did not expect, that the parents, who have been kind of like, you know, sort of background comedy characters, you know, it's the funny thing, the kids are involved in all this really serious end of the world stuff, and the parents have no clue that their kids are involved with it. It's you know, it's a trope from the 80s, but the parents do get involved this time as the Wheelers are attacked at home. And you know what? I'm gonna give it up to Daddy Wheeler, Father Wheeler. He never gets any love. Everybody kind of ignores him. Even in this, like after the attack, he's like in a coma, and like nobody cares about him. They always just like, we need to talk to Mom. It's like, and it's just so I'm gonna give him credit because, you know, with his 3 kids being Nancy and Mike, and we find out Holly's kind of a badass in this season 2, you figure they probably got some of that from their dad. And to his credit, Father Wheeler, with his golf club, he did take a swing at a Demogorgon. He didn't run away and hide. He went and fought the thing. He got clipped pretty badly, but he at least fought the thing. But then that led to the first big shock of the season, which was the Wheelers versus the Demogorgons, and Mama Wheeler, you know, being Mama Bear, standing her ground, she broke that wine bottle and started stabbing at that Demogorgon. She got sliced up for it as Nancy comes to find her mother on the floor. Now, there's something about this scene also I wanted to talk about, because I've seen very few people even reference it or even recognize it, but this whole scene with the Wheelers and the kitchen, and if you look at the kitchen countertops and the kitchen floor and the chairs around the table, it looks very familiar to the Freeling's house from the first Poltergeist movie. And in fact, the whole scene in which Holly is abducted from by one of the Demogorgons looks eerily, suspiciously similar to the scene in the later part of the Poltergeist movie from 1982, where the big the JJ wall, as we used to call it back in the day, was coming for the kids, and the whole thing with Carol Ann, that even a father was outside looking at the house with all the weird lights going off in it. It was just like an allusion to Poltergeist. So I thought that was pretty cool. A lot of people didn't pick up on that one, but that was a good reference. The Demogorgon does wind up taking Holly, goes into the Upside Down, because now at this point, since what happened at the end of season 4 with the gates converging and all that stuff, now the Demogorgons are just come and go as they please. But Elle is on the pursuit. Elle goes through while Nancy stays with her mom, and this leads into the whole storyline with Elle and Hopper, who they both wind up in the Upside Down at the same time, because Hopper is one of the most crucial parts of what's called a crawl, and this is a D&D thing, so I don't play D&D, so I'm not familiar with all the lore and everything else with that, but the team has been doing this for a while. Robin, who works at a radio station as Rockin' Robin, she's kind of using her position at the radio station to relay like coded signals to the rest of the team and everybody else listening on the radio so they can do these crawls. They've done 30 of them looking for Vecna, trying to kill him. They can't find him. This time it goes terribly wrong because the whole thing with Hopper is he piggybacks onto the military who's going into the Upside Down. They have a base in the Upside Down. Get to that in a little bit. And it goes awry because the Demogorgons attack, and then Hopper is kind of left slightly injured. He gets grazed by a bullet. He does meet up with 11 when they're in there, and they kind of rehash their season 3, overprotective father, rebellious daughter thing for a little bit here. But they resolve it very quickly, and I did feel like that part, you could have cut that out. We've already done that. We did that in season 3. We don't need to revisit it here again. But it was fine. It was over pretty quickly. They run into this giant wall where one of the army military soldiers pees on it, and Ella's obsessed with that. Whether that's coming back in later episodes of the season, I don't know. But this is a meat wall that they can't get through. 11 can't pull it apart. Hopper can't stab into it. It's just really disgusting and nasty. It's really awesome looking though, but it's disgusting. And they're kind of trapped there. Meanwhile, we catch up with the teens. And the teens, they've got their own drama going on. Jonathan and Steve are kind of having this macho contest for the affections of Nancy. Nancy's just rolling her eyes through the whole thing. And, this is Steve territory. This is Steve being Steve. I love Steve. He's one of my favorite characters in the show. But Steve is having some problems with his bros because not only are he and Jonathan having this weird kind of combat, or as Jonathan called it, misogynistic macho BS or whatever he said, but Steve and Dustin, the dynamic duo, they're not on good terms. They're arguing and fussing with each other a lot, and Dustin again has been irritable because Dustin is dealing with the fallout from Eddie and the fact that he knows Eddie is a hero that tried to save the town, but as far as the town is concerned, he was the cause of all this and some devil worshiper. So Dustin's walking around still wearing the Hellfire Club stuff, getting bullied at school. I will give it to Dustin when he gets confronted by the bullies for the beatdown. He gets his scraps in, he gets his licks in. Again, I'm gonna throw it out for Dustin and Father Wheeler. They didn't go down like punks, so good. But Dustin misses the appointment, the assignment he had with Steve during the crawl, so that's the beginning of everything kind of going out of whack. And we wind up with Steve and Dustin and Jonathan all being pissed at each other, trying to find where Hopper is in the signal, because the way they're tracking Hopper is he's in the Upside Down. They can roll around on Hawkins in the right side up and kind of track his position where he is, but since things have gone awry, they can't track him. So they're having a big problem with that. This leads to Will, who's encouraged by Robin to use his spider tingles, his tingly feelings, his spider sense that he gets from Vecna to track where Hopper is, and now to track where Holly is so they can find her. Joyce, being the overprotective mother, doesn't want her son involved, but this is the whole smothering mother storyline subplot with the two of them finally coming to a head where Will's like, hey, no, your plan sucked. I'm getting older. I'm not a baby anymore. You don't need to baby me. I need to do this too. I'm part of this. I need to help take Vecna down in any way we possibly can. Robin, of course, the most interesting thing with her relationship with Will is people have been waiting for this because Robin is the other gay character on the show, and Will kind of accidentally sees Robin and her girlfriend, the Molly Ringwald lookalike from 16 Candles, making out at the hospital. Robin knows that he saw, but Robin doesn't know that Will's gay, and she kind of figures it out, and then he's kind of poking her to kind of see, hey, how did you know that you found somebody else that was gay like you, and it's kind of a touching thing, Stranger Things has done a pretty good job at, despite obviously it's Netflix and the subject matter, there's political, social overtones. Obviously they have a certain viewpoint, and it does come through on the show sometimes. These are the outcasts, these are the nerds, and even in this season, we've got a one-dimensional Republican family that they made sure they had to put into the show. But they've been pretty good with balancing that stuff along with the human drama and the things that people obviously in the LGBT. These are the L's and the G's. The L's and the G's go through, especially back in the 80s when that was the last decade where. Before it became socially acceptable. Younger people now, we've got the genders thing now, but in the 80s, for people like Will and Robin in that time, it was somewhat dangerous still to come out of the closet. So that's a cool touching scene that the two of them have. And Robin winds up being crucial because something she says to Will about just embracing himself. He doesn't need Mike's validation or Mike to be his boyfriend or even to have a boyfriend in order for him just to accept himself, which is a kind of a way that they're getting around the whole Mike, Will love triangle that really isn't a love triangle because Mike isn't gay. So that's a good way for them to get around that story. And for Will, he doesn't need to have a relationship to be himself. He can just accept himself as himself. And he does that in this series. And that's one of the coolest things that happens. Again, it's a point for Robin as really elevating herself up as one of the core characters, and she has been for the last couple seasons on the show. In the background of all of this, we have Linda Hamilton playing Dr. K, who's kind of leading the military group from inside, that jarhead dude from season 4. He's really reporting to her, and she's kind of the mastermind in the military behind this. And she finds out that Elle is in the Upside Down near their base, and Hopper and Elle concoct this plan to go and infiltrate the base because there's a big strong signal coming out of there. The military has this new psionic weapon that kind of disables Elle, and they see them use that several times, so they're going to go there to destroy the source. And Elle believes the source of that, after basically torturing a soldier, was Vecna, that they had Henry inside of that military base in the Upside Down, and they had captured him. On the other side of this, the teenagers wind up, through a lot of arguing and drama and love triangle stuff there, and Steve, again, grandly standing up for himself and kind of responding to Jonathan and saying, hey, if you weren't such a, know-it-all pothead, whatever you're supposed to be, the only person more miserable in that relationship with you and Nancy is Nancy. And he kind of dogged Jonathan there a little bit. But between all of their fighting, it does wind up with Nancy and Jonathan and Steve and Dustin, none of them getting along. None of these people, the 4 of these people are not getting along at all. And the 4 of them wind up trying to track down a Demogorgon that they were trying to capture, and they wind up going into the Upside Down again. So they meet up with Hopper and Elle, communicating from the opposite sides of this wall, which Dustin had figured out because he pays attention in algebra, was a giant circle, and at the midpoint of this circle was, of course, Hawkins' lab. So that leaves them on their adventures in the Upside Down. Out back in the real world, we've got Max, who's almost waking up from that Kate Bush song, but Lucas is, he had to rewind the song a little bit too early. We find out that after Holly's been abducted, she's in this dream world, which is very thief of always. It is obviously it's a Wrinkle in Time inspired, but she can be in his house. That's Henry's house, and Henry is presenting himself to her kind of like a helpful hand. He's told her about the monsters that are going to come in Hawkins to get her, and he's going to protect them, her and all the other kids from these monsters. And this is the plot of season 5 so far. What Vecna's plot is, he's going after all of these kids and Hawkins, and Holly was one of the first ones he went after, and he's basically abducted her. Will, through his vision, sees that it's not only Holly, there's a couple other kids, and there are more kids that he's going after, including this new kid, this little rotund kid who's kind of a douchebag, but we'll get to him in a second. But Holly's stuck in his house, and she gets the mail delivered while she's eating cake and watching TV and listening to Tiffany. And it's apparently from Henry that says, "Come help me, meet me out here by these rocks." She goes out to the rocks and finds that Max is there. And Max runs into her, and they have this entire conversation. Max lets Holly know what's really going on, who Henry really is. That we get a little bit of an explanation about how Max is here, and it's a part of her consciousness that's been hopping around trying to find a way out back to her body, and she's almost found a way out, but she can't. But the only place she could find that was safe from Vecna was here in this rock formation that's out in Nevada, in a memory of his. And Vecna, Henry, will not go there. There's something that terrifies him within this rock formation. And this leads into some backstory with the stage play, which we'll get to in volume 2 if they go into it in the next part of this season. So Max and Holly devise a plan on how they're going to get out. Again, more allusions back to A Wrinkle in Time from escaping the city. They're trying to escape this prison that Vecna, Henry 1 has them in. Back to Hopper and Elle, they do wind up finding the source of all this stuff after this great fight in the army base, and Linda Hamilton stole badass. But once Hopper, again, kind of teases that he's going to sacrifice himself, which I didn't buy for a second, they go into this room. Now, this is where I was a little bit ahead of the show, because as soon as they said that Elle thought that it was Henry that the army was keeping, it didn't make any sense, because if the army was keeping him, he wouldn't be abducting these children. And I was like, well, who would it be? And I thought, oh, it must be that girl from season 2. And yes, it was true. 8 in I guess a surprise. I think a lot of people pretty much figured that out early on. Some people didn't, but 8 is back from season 2, the episode that everybody hates from season 2. Unanimously, nobody liked the El on Dagobah punk rock, whatever the hell that thing was in season 2. It didn't feel right. It never set right with anybody. But 8 is back. She is captured here in a scene that's very reminiscent of a scene out of Mass Effect, video game, Mass Effect 2, or Project Overlord. It's a very similar kind of situation there, where they're using this powered person to kind of amplify some weapon or whatever, as the military does. Erica is back. The kids in the back in Hawkins use Erica to kind of convince. So, well, let's be honest about it. They attack, drug, and kidnap a child from a family. Now, this is horrible, and it is played as kind of dark comedy, but the only way again, I do give warning, because I know that, obviously half the country, is sensitive to this kind of stuff, but there is a little bit of a political thing here. They present his family as these one-dimensional Republicans, very obnoxious and clueless and all that kind of stuff. So that is in here, and that's kind of the only way they could justify Erica basically being like some psychotic serial killer. And even when the daughter didn't eat the pie that she drugged the rest of the family with, Erica gets up from the table and stabs the girl in the neck to tranquilize her, to knock her out. Now, the reason that the crew is kidnapping, there's actually, I guess, a good reason for this, is that Vecna has targeted this little boy who is a brat, the little rotund kid. They call him a dipshit. So there's a lot of dick jokes in this season too, which is kind of weird. That's how they find out where the kids are. So they kidnap this kid. The Demogorgon comes and attacks. Joyce stands up to the Demogorgon. You think Joyce is going to die, but Will, I kind of suspected at this point too that Will, maybe because he could see through the Demogorgon, maybe he could pull it back from his mother, but maybe I was right, maybe I wasn't right about that. But nobody dies. The Demogorgon gets hit by a car by the teens earlier on before they chase it in through to the Upside Down. The big thing that comes out of this, though, is that Joyce, Mike, Will, Robin, and a few others, Murray's been doing smuggling contraband around Hawkins, which is all basically a quarantine zone because it's Murray. That's what he would do. So he's smuggling them equipment whenever he can, and now they're trying to help. He's trying to help the kids, the crew, because they figure that the military has rounded up all of these kids, all the kids in Hawkins, because they figured out kids were being targeted and put them in his military base to protect them. It also kind of makes it an easy target for Vecna to get them all at one time, and for our crew to go and get them all out at one time. So they send this kid in, the little rotund kid in there, who first seems like he's going to be kind of a jerk character, but then he actually becomes kind of funny because he is a jerk. But he goes in there and he's got this mission, and he's a big G.I. Joe fan. You see it in his room as a kid in the 80s, and he's on this mission like he's a G.I. Joe operative, and he's finding out who the kids are that have talked to Henry. He gets them all together and then leads them into the bathroom one by one because he's leading a meditation session that he learned from his mother because she uses it when she's out of Valium. So he gets, this kid is so funny. He gets the kids to go into the bathroom in these different intervals, and meanwhile our crew has, through a Tom, Dick, and Harry joke, found out how to get underneath the base, and another Goonies kind of illusion with hitting the pipes in the bathroom, and again another throwback to the Goonies, which Stranger Things has always done. But they dig a hole in the bathroom, the kids go in one by one, they can get the kids out of there. They get caught though because Mike hit a pipe and then the water's leaking everywhere, and one of the other kids who's not in the group tells, and then everybody's in trouble. Joyce and Will and Mike and Lucas all get arrested by the military, so they got problems, and then things really go to hell because Vecna comes through and gets the kids. He attacks everybody. Joyce thinks that she's going to stand up to Vecna, and looking very mean and stomping towards him while yelling at him is going to do something. It didn't. He kind of swiped her aside very easily. She luckily didn't die. And then he grabs Will and tells Will that, I picked you for a reason. You were weak. There's some minds that don't belong in this world. And he's kind of making an allusion to Will being gay and being an outcast. And then he kind of leaves Will. And people have been suspecting why did he leave Will alive? Well, he left Will alive because you don't kill it. Will's not a threat at this point to Vecna. How wrong he would be, but Will is not a threat, which was the point he was making. Is like, you were so weak and pathetic. You're like an ant to me. I was like, I have no reason to kill you. It's like a reason that we would have to step on an ant unless we really, really wanted to be mean. And Vecna's like, whatever. Unfortunately for Vecna, he was dead wrong, as we then see Will as the Demogorgons are closing in. One's about to kill Mike, one's about to kill Lucas, one's about to kill poor old Robin. But in the last split second, Will listens to the words that Robin has said to him earlier, has these flashbacks to when he first met Mike and all of these great moments he had in his life and building castle buyers with his brother. And Will finally finds the strength, and his eyes turn white, and he holds his hand up from underneath, not out like 11 does. That's a good notable difference between the two. And he stops the Demogorgon from killing Mike. And then with his other hand, from at a distance, remotely, he stops the Demogorgon that's about to kill Lucas. And then he lifts his head up and stops the Demogorgon that's about to kill Robin, closes his hands and lowers his head in one fluid motion. And just like Vecna did to the kids in season 4, Will cracks the limbs of all the Demogorgons, kills them, leaves them in a heap, saves his friends. His mother looks up and goes, holy crap. Mike looks at him and goes, holy crap. The audience, we all look at Will and go, holy crap. Will has psionic psychic powers, and they end this part of the season with Will wiping the blood from underneath his nose, the telltale sign that Elle and One and all the psychic kids on the show so far have shown that they have psychic abilities. So Will, the wizard, the sorcerer, the mage, whatever you want to call him, He now has gone from the weakest member of the crew to the most powerful. Again, another allusion to the X-Men, which there's a lot of that in Stranger Things too. They love the X-Men. Elle, when I guess she was about that stage in her development, could barely crush a Coke can. Will might be more powerful than Elle. We don't know. I'm kind of seeing right now, and this is looking at some extra notes on the season. Number one, I want to mention, I do miss Argyle. I wish they could have found a way to put Argyle in this season, and maybe he'll make a cameo or something. Hopefully, maybe a phone call at least or something. We can get a little Argyle cameo going on. That'd be cool. But as far as the season is concerned, Act 1, Volume 1 of Season 5, I enjoyed it. I was the first episode is a drag in a bit because they're trying to establish where everybody is, so it's understandable. But once we get to the attack on the Wheeler's house, which I did not expect that to happen, and I was really surprised that they attacked. Not only attacked, but I thought they had killed the parents. But the parents are still alive. They're in bad shape, and the mother's not going to be able to talk, and the father's in a coma. But hopefully we'll see some resolution to that. But after that, it picked up. There were some goofy things in here, some things that didn't quite work. But overall, I felt that Volume 1 of Stranger Things Season 5 was a pretty good home run. We are now left wondering what's going to happen to the teens in the Upside Down. Where are they going to go? How is that going to work out? What's going to happen to Eleven and Hopper down at the military base? And they found 8. And given that now we have 8 and we've got Will with psychic powers, I'm kind of wondering, is this going to be, are we going full X-Men here? Are we going to have like 3, 4, or 5 psychic power kids by the end of this whole thing that are going to be, the three, all of them together are going to defeat Vecna? And again, obviously Will realizing his powers, realizing himself, accepting himself, the friendship with Mike, I think that whole thing is kind of resolved now. They do need to have a conversation about it. Mike needs to acknowledge Will, and I think that'll be the end of it. So I think we're going to get that. Joyce also needs to acknowledge Will in a different way, that her son is, again, clearly not a helpless baby anymore. Max, where are her and Holly going to do? How are they going to escape Vecna's mind world? What is Vecna's overall plan gathering these children? It looks like he might have to gather 12 of them in this vision that Will had. Is Eddie going to be absolved of his crimes? Are the townsfolk of Hawkins ever going to realize that they've had a bunch of nerdy kids and one jock basically saving their lives year after year after year, and things would be far worse if it wasn't for them? And what else is going to happen in the future? What are we going to be introduced to? What are going to be some new twists that are coming down the pike? I want to know what you guys think. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. Until next time, I will see you guys here as we continue to review Stranger Things Season 5 and other reviews in the future here on the Rantin Review Entertainment. Have a good day.